Erasers of the galaxy. The Drexer didn't conquer planets. They erased them. Entire worlds, their cultures, their histories were reduced to blackened wastelands in mere hours. Every broadcast that tried to warn of their approach ended with the same desperate plea: run. They're here. Across the galaxy, whole civilizations disappeared into silence, swallowed by fires from the skies and the unstoppable advance of biological steel. For a time, the galaxy did nothing. The Council of 11, composed of the most advanced, supposedly wisest alien species in the quadrant, chose survival over defiance. Evacuate and preserve. They said retreat, endure, and wait for the storm to pass. Their strategy was built on cowardice, disguised as wisdom, on fragile philosophies written in the comfort of peace. But storms like the Drexer didn't pass. They only grew hungrier. The Drexer were nightmares given flesh. Hulking insectoid monstrosities wrapped in armored carapaces wielding weaponry stolen and twisted from the ruins of the civilizations they destroyed. They possessed no interest in diplomacy, no curiosity for the stars beyond their conquest. Where they went, life ended. Where they lingered, only ash remained. In just 4 galactic years, the Drexer had swept across 3 entire sectors, obliterating over 1,000 planets, countless moons, and the millions, perhaps billions, who called them home. Even the famed warrior species, the Surak, had been crushed in a single brutal campaign, their military might shredded like paper against the Drexer's endless onslaught. Hope became a myth. Survival became a prayer, whispered into dying nights. Resistance seemed a word meant only for fools and martyrs. And so the whispers began. Whispers of an ancient terror, not the Drexer, but something else. A forgotten people long erased from council memory, dismissed as primitive, chaotic, and dangerously unpredictable humanity. Official records, sanitized and neatly categorized, described humans as violent and backward, an anomaly too destabilizing for galactic peace. Unofficial stories told a different tale of warriors who fought not for conquest nor for glory, but because in their blood conflict was a language older than their stars, a species that had refused to disarm when the Galactic Accord demanded peace, who had walked away from the Council rather than bend a knee. Most believed humanity had perished in obscurity after their exile. Others whispered darker theories that they hadn't died but hidden lurking somewhere beyond the rim of known space, sharpening their swords in the dark while the rest of the galaxy grew fat and complacent. The whispers gained urgency after the fall of Kier 4. Kier 4 was a mid-tier trade world, an unremarkable speck of commerce and mining hubs, orbiting a fated star. Strategic enough to matter, but not important enough for the Council to defend when the Drexer came. Like so many others before it, Kier 4 was written off as a necessary loss, a diplomatic term to soothe guilty minds across polished marble halls. On the night of the attack, Kier 4's skies ignited in terror. The Drexer's mothership, in a monstrosity the size of a small moon, hovered above the planet, preparing to rain extinction down upon its surface. Civilians ran bunkers sealed, and the few remaining militia forces prepared to die, screaming into the dark. But then something happened. Council surveillance drones, still circling the area, out of bureaucratic obligation, captured it all. A glitch in the scanners, a reading that should not have existed. A classified vessel detected unknown origin. No Council identifiers cloaked until the very moment it chose to be seen. When it revealed itself, it did so without flourish or announcement. No pings, no broadcasts, no plea for surrender. Just a ship, long black, jagged like a scar across the void. Its hull bore a single word etched deep into scarred steel: HSS Vengeance. At first, the Drexer mothership hesitated, confused. Then, as was their nature, it charged its weapons. The Vengeance answered with fire. One shot, dense, unnatural, bone-shaking, even through the vacuum, leapt from its forward cannon. It wasn't clean or clinical like Council weaponry. It was brutal, primal. The Drexer shields, designed to withstand fleets, cracked and shattered like brittle glass. For the first time in galactic history, the Drexer retreated. The footage spread like wildfire, faster than any Council decree could suppress. The whispers turned into desperate shouts across communication networks. Find the humans, we need them. But the humans did not answer calls. They did not send envoys or declarations. The HSS Vengeance vanished back into the blackness of space, leaving only silence in its wake and a fear the Drexer had never known before. A fear that would soon reshape the entire galaxy. The shadow over Kier 4 Vengeance appears. In the darkened control rooms of the Council, panic seeped like oil through the cracks of polished confidence. The footage from Kier 4 played on endless loops across every intelligence screen, analyzed frame by frame, pixel by pixel. No origin, no registration, no warning. A vessel etched with scars and death, obliterating the unthinkable in a single shot. The council didn't know what was worse, that they hadn't built it, or that they no longer knew who had. Across the battered remains of Kier 4 survivors huddled in broken shelters, watching the night sky for another miracle or another nightmare. The local news feeds, shaky and filled with static, replayed the same moment over and over. The Drexer mothership faltering its monstrous form, staggering under the blow of the Vengeance's cannon, before retreating into the blackness without completing its annihilation. For a world already consigned to death, it was salvation delivered not by diplomacy nor mercy, but by sheer merciless power. The legends of humanity, once whispered in the deepest corners of Council history, roared back to life. Emergency sessions were called across the Council's protected systems. Theories spiraled. Was it a relic, some ancient derelict reactivated by desperate survivors? Was it a rogue AI weaponized and abandoned from a darker age? No one wanted to say the obvious truth, that humanity, the outcast species, had survived. And not just survived, they had evolved. Some counselors argued for immediate outreach, offers of peace treaties, alliances. Others, more cynical, whispered that if humans had such weapons now, if they still carried that same violent spark, then they were more dangerous than the Drexer themselves. Meanwhile, the Drexer hive reeled. For the Drexer overmind, fear was not an emotion. It was a signal, a systemic alarm cascading through every node of their shared consciousness. The encounter at Kier 4 had sent ripples of uncertainty through their entire collective mind. Their strategists, grotesque entities suspended in nutrient vats, shifted their algorithms. For the first time in their merciless expansion, they recalculated. The humans were not extinct. The humans were not weak. The humans were unknown. And what the Drexer feared most, what every conqueror feared, was the unknown. At the outskirts of known space beyond the reach of Council patrols, the HSS Vengeance lay hidden, cloaked not by fancy energy fields, but by pure strategic absence. A ship built for war, designed by minds who had not forgotten what true survival demanded. Inside it was a shrine to conflict. Exposed wires dangled from patched walls. Bulkheads bore the scorched scars of battles fought in other unseen wars. The air tasted faintly of burnt metal and old blood. At the heart of the Vengeance, Commander Lynn Vale reviewed the combat logs again and again, her weary eyes unblinking. She wasn't searching for mistakes, there hadn't been any. She was calculating the odds for the next engagement, because she knew Kier 4 was only the beginning. Her tactical officer, Jin, glanced up from his console. "Still no response from Earth," he said, voice low. Vale exhaled sharply through her nose, a sound, half snort, half bitter laugh. "Of course not," she muttered. "Wouldn't be our style." Humanity had made a choice decades ago. When they were exiled, a pact sealed in silence and cold resolve. They would not crawl back, they would not beg. If the galaxy didn't want humanity, then it would survive or fall without them. But the galaxy hadn't survived. In the quiet isolation beyond the core systems, humanity had endured, not as diplomats, not as philosophers, as warriors. The Council's treaties, their declarations of peace, had softened every species that signed them. Weapons dismantled, armies dissolved, defense systems traded for academic discussions and mutual trust. Humanity had smiled politely and buried its arsenals deeper. Vale leaned against the window of the command deck, staring into the void. Somewhere out there, Earth still spun in the dark. She didn't know where exactly, not anymore. That was part of the plan. Even to her, location was need to know. Compartmentalization. Survival by secrecy. It wasn't about going home. It was about making sure there would still be something left to call home. A soft ping echoed through the command deck. Commander Jin said urgently, "New contacts. Multiple Drexer ships dropping from warp." Vale's jaw tightened. "How many?" 14, no mothership, but there's a Reaver class with them. She smiled thinly, coldly. "They're sending their dogs. No orders to negotiate. No attempts at communication. Just overwhelming force." The Drexer didn't intend to scare the humans, they intended to dissect them. Vale cracked her knuckles, a long ingrained habit from years of battlefield conditioning. "Let them sniff," she said. "And when they get close enough, we'll remind them why their ancestors feared the dark." The HSS Vengeance powered up silently its weapons, warming like a slumbering beast. Outside, the Drexer ships spread out in a hunter's pattern, thinking themselves the predators. They hadn't realized the truth yet. Predators bleed too, and humanity had spent a long, patient exile learning exactly how to make them. The secret of Earth. Out beyond the mapped stars past the dying systems, where even Drexer scouts dared not linger, lay a planet shrouded in silence. Official council charts marked it as a dead world, a casualty of environmental collapse long before the Drexer scourge began. A footnote in forgotten databases, a warning to avoid. That planet was Earth, but Earth was no tomb. It was a blade hidden in a ruined sheath. After the exile, after humanity was cast out by the Council under the banners of peace and order, Earth made a brutal decision. No negotiation, no compliance, no communication. They severed their ties to the galaxy so completely that even whispers of their existence faded into myth. They burned their satellites. They shut down their deep space relays. They dismantled every beacon that might reveal their pulse. And while the galaxy disarmed trading soldiers for philosophers and fleets for treaties, humanity sharpened itself in secret. Beneath the dust-choked surface of the old continents, vast cities carved into bedrock and reinforced with neutronium steel spread like veins. They called it the Cradle, a subterranean complex stretching across half a hemisphere, invisible from orbit, shielded against every known method of detection. Here humanity evolved. They did not strive for peace, they prepared for war. Entire generations were raised not with dreams of galactic unity, but with lessons written in blood and fire. Pilots trained in zero-gravity dogfights before they could vote. Engineers designed weapon systems capable of tearing moons in half. Tacticians studied not the art of negotiation, but the science of annihilation. The Cradle was humanity's heart and its shield. Every Drexer assault across the galaxy, every world erased, every species. Butchered humanity had watched silent recording, analyzing building profiles, vulnerabilities, patterns. The Cradle's databanks pulsed with grim knowledge, the weaknesses of alien technologies, the biological stress points of the Drexer hive mind, the limitations of council fleets, softened by centuries of disarmament. When the Drexer began their march across the sectors, humanity didn't panic. They checked the clocks, they finalized designs, they completed prototypes, they loaded the first warships. Ships like the HSS Vengeance, not fleets for patrol or diplomacy, but weapons platforms engineered to deliver extinction-level blows. Few in number, each more lethal than anything the galaxy had ever dared to imagine. Inside the Cradle's command center, deep beneath what had once been the Rocky Mountains, a glowing galactic map hovered in the air. Red spread across it like a cancer. Drexer-occupied sectors blinking with grim finality. At its center, surrounded by void and vigilance, a single blue light pulsed steady and defiant Earth. General Reeves, a living relic of humanity's last open wars, stood at the forefront of the table. His face was half flesh, half war-grade chrome, a testament to battles fought and survived when survival was not expected. His voice when he spoke was gravel and steel. Commander Vale engaged at Cure 4, he said. Successful hit Drexer mothership retreated. Around him, high-ranking officers murmured, some in disbelief, others in grim satisfaction. News from the void was rare, victories even rarer. Minister Tari head of what little remained of strategic diplomacy leaned forward, her long fingers steepled beneath her chin. Any council response? Reeves snorted, silence, maybe too proud, maybe too scared. Tari's gaze hardened. Good, let them sweat. Silence hung heavy for a moment, broken only by the soft hum of machinery. Then Tari spoke again, voice low, deliberate. It's time, isn't it? Reeves nodded once, emotion filled with finality. Yes, no more hiding, no more waiting. He turned toward the command consoles lining the chamber. Activate the fleet. At his command, the Cradle stirred. Across the buried caverns, alarm klaxons sounded not in fear, but in awakening. Hangars the size of cities lit up with blue light, as ancient warships long thought destroyed, powered up with seismic force. Docked vessels groaned against their restraints, engines the size of skyscrapers roaring to life. Their names flickered into existence one by one across the operation screens: HSS Retribution, HSS Warlord, HSS Ghost Hammer, HSS Final Dawn, and dozens more, each piloted by soldiers raised not for patrol, not for peacekeeping, but for survival against the impossible. These were not peacekeepers, they were avengers, and they were angry. Above the Earth-camouflaged orbital platforms reactivated forgotten protocols, defense grids, sleeper satellites, kinetic bombardment stations, all prepared to unleash their fury at a moment's notice. The old world had been a monument to diplomacy. The new Earth was a fortress built for apocalypse. Back aboard the HSS Vengeance, Vale received a single priority transmission through an encrypted channel so old, so buried that even Drexer algorithms couldn't trace it. She opened it with a steady hand, the familiar encryption sequence flickering across her screen. One sentence, one promise. You are not alone anymore. Vale allowed herself to show a thin, grim smile. Out there beyond the dead stars and empty treaties, Earth was waking up, and humanity was coming for its reckoning. The first strike, humanity returns to war. The Drexer swarm moved fast. They believed speed was dominance, that overwhelming force applied quickly would shatter any resistance before it could form. It had worked for centuries. No species had survived their initial onslaught. No fleet had reorganized quickly enough to mount a counterattack. But humanity had not been idle. They had been waiting, and they knew how to fight a losing battle, because for them, every war had started that way. In the dark void beyond regulated council space, the HSS Vengeance drifted, still cloaked in the shadows of broken moons. Its systems, though battered, were primed for one purpose: to bait the Drexer into overextending. They came in swarms, 14 ships, a Reaver class leading the hunt, bristling with acidic breachers and plasma cutters. These weren't scouts. They were hunters. Their mission was simple: track, analyze, capture if possible, destroy if necessary. Vale sat rigid in her command chair as sensor readings poured in. Contact in 30 seconds. Jin reported, his voice tense. Status on weapons? Vale asked, her gaze locked on the tactical displays. Railcore round 1 is loaded, capacitors at 80%, shields at 72. Good enough, she muttered. We're not here to hold, we're here to hurt. The Drexter ships tightened their formation as they closed in their gravitational drives, distorting the surrounding space. From the lead vessel, a standard galactic code, Pulse broadcasted a single warning, arrogant in its simplicity. Stand down. Prepare for capture. Vale's lips curled into a feral grin. Play the message, she ordered. Jin hesitated a fraction of a second before tapping a command. A voice crackled across the void, distorted, grim, defiant. To the Drexer Overmind, you wanted to conquer. You should have checked under the bed before waking the monster. You want war. You just found it. Vale gave the order without a second's pause. Fire. The Vengeance's railcore howled a soundless roar through the vacuum. A force of physics made rage. The tungsten slug, wrapped in magnetoplasma, screamed across space and slammed into the Reaver-class ship. The result was instant. The Drexer ship didn't just explode, it fractured, split open like a living creature, gutted mid-charge. Shockwaves tore through 2 nearby Drexer vessels, ripping their hulls apart, scattering burning debris into the void. Panic rippled through the swarm ships, scattered, breaking formation. But Vale didn't pursue. She didn't need to. The message had been sent loud and brutal. Let them run. Let them crawl back to the Overmind. Let them tell their hive what they had faced and what still waited in the dark. Damage report, Vale asked, her voice calm. Minor heat stress on rail systems. Shields stable, ammo remaining 1 railcore round. She nodded. Enough for the next move. Across the galaxy, the Drexer hive reeled at the loss. Loss wasn't unfamiliar, but fear was. Tactical calculations shifted violently across the Overmind's thought webs. Humanity wasn't behaving like any other species. They didn't flee, didn't sue for peace, didn't shatter at the first blow. They hunted back. The Overmind issued a new directive across its network: full mobilization. No more small fleets, no more cautious probes. It summoned every surviving scout drone and war beast to Sector 12. It even awakened the Reavers from deep hibernation. Genetically engineered assassins designed for exterminating apex threats. It would swarm the humans. It would rip apart this pocket of resistance before it could fester into something worse. But they were already too late. Out beyond the regulated sectors, Earth's hidden fleet moved, no longer shrouded, no longer silent. The first wave of humanity's return to open war unfolded like a steel tide. The HSS Retribution, Earth's largest warship, led the charge, a city-sized dreadnought wrapped in blackened armor with the word "Never Again" blazing across its hull in searing silver. Behind it, cruisers, destroyers, stealth corvettes, 100 ships. Once ghosts, now roared into battle. Engines blazed like newborn stars, hulls bristling with weapons designed not for defense, but for the annihilation of entire fleets. Above Earth, the orbital defense platforms activated fully for the first time in centuries. Luna Base 1, disguised for so long as Earth's barren moon, split open along hidden seams, revealing colossal rail batteries and defense grids capable of swatting entire enemy squadrons from the sky. Earth itself became a fortress, not a world to conquer, but a world that would devour any who tried. Vale watched the sensor feeds from the Vengeance's battered bridge, a flicker of grim satisfaction passing across her scarred features. They were late to the first battles, maybe, but humanity had returned, and they weren't here to make peace. They were here to remind the galaxy and the Drexer what it meant to awaken something they should have left sleeping. Jin turned toward her, eyes wide with anticipation. "Orders, Commander." Vale stared into the black, watching the Drexer regroup, gathering for another assault. She spoke, her voice steady as steel. "Reload the rail core, set course for the swarm. We don't wait for them." The Vengeance lurched forward under her command engines, roaring against the dying silence. Because in the new war that was coming, hesitation was death, and humanity had run out of patience. The cataclysm of Warcast. The Drexer had been wounded, and a wounded beast was the most dangerous. The Overmind, furious at its first retreat in millennia, abandoned all pretense of strategic patience. It summoned the Warcast. The galaxy had forgotten about the Warcast living weapons bred during the Drexer's earliest conquests, before civilization had even learned how to build starships. They were not merely ships, they were monsters. Biomechanical nightmares bred in black laboratories, stitched together from muscle bone and ancient tech designed with one singular purpose: annihilation. When the Warcast awoke, space itself recoiled. Sensors across human and alien systems alike went blind or mad. Gravity rippled in unnatural patterns, communications fractured into static and screaming. And from the broken veil of a dead nebula, the first Warcast emerged, slithering through space like a living apocalypse. It was not sleek or graceful like council vessels. It was raw terror made manifest, a colossal serpentine beast, its body armored with plates of fused neutronium bone, eyes glowing like dying stars, tentacles clawing against the void. Each movement tore small rifts in local spacetime, leaving scars across the starscape. Commander Vale stood at the battered bridge of the HSS Vengeance, staring at the visual feeds with a silent, grim understanding. This was not a Drexer fleet. This was something worse, something ancient. The Warcast did not communicate. It did not demand surrender. It did not negotiate terms. It simply charged. Jin's voice cracked as he read the incoming data. "Target mass, sir. It's the size of a minor moon." Vale's jaw tightened. "Weapon systems. Fully charged, one rail core round left. It's not going to be enough." Vale exhaled slowly. "Doesn't matter, we hit it anyway." Across the fleet, humanity scrambled to respond. The HSS Retribution pulled into high orbit, its defensive systems whirring to full power. Cruisers formed up in protective formations, trying to channel the Warcast path toward preset kill zones. But it was like trying to cage a hurricane. The first clash came swift and brutal. The Vengeance fired its rail core, the molten slug tearing through the void and smashing into the Warcast flank. Flesh and armor exploded in gory sprays of biometal, but the creature barely flinched. It rotated mid-charge, absorbing smaller Drexer vessels into its mass as it came growing larger, meaner, faster. From Luna Base 1, the Heaven Spear, Earth's prototype orbital rail weapon fired its first and only shot. A rod of solid tungsten, half the size of a skyscraper, accelerated to half the speed of light, slicing through the Warcast midsection. 3 limbs detached and floated, burning into the void. But still it came. It opened its maw not to unleash missiles or plasma fire, but to scream a soundless, psychic roar that rippled across every ship's systems, frying circuits, shattering lesser crews into madness. 2 human destroyers ruptured instantly, their shields collapsing under the raw psychic assault. The Vengeance shuddered violently as feedback slammed into its systems. Sparks flew across the command deck. Jin was thrown against the bulkhead, blood streaking his forehead. Vale clutched the command console, knuckles white. "Shields at 41%, Jin shouted, regaining his station. "Keep us moving," Vale barked. "If we stop, we're dead." The Warcast surged forward, now targeting the HSS Retribution directly, Earth's biggest warship, the hammer of their secret arsenal. General Reeves, commanding the Retribution, watched the incoming nightmare with the cold precision only decades of battlefield scars could grant. He didn't order retreat. He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned toward his gunnery officer and gave a simple command. "Target the Hardfire Judgment Core." The Retribution's primary weapon, a super-dense fusion shell, encased in quantum foam, charged and unleashed with a recoil so brutal it cracked part of the ship's reinforced spine. The shell struck the Warcast dead center. For the first time, the beast screamed in real agony. 3 of its tentacles shattered. Its central body sagged inward, bleeding some horrific ichor into the void. The creature spasmed, its gravitational fields collapsing and reigniting in chaotic bursts. But it did not die. It turned rage incarnate straight toward Earth, straight toward humanity's last line. Vale gritted her teeth as she stared at the impossible readings. If the Warcast breached Earth's defenses, there would be no second chance. She tapped her console. "Prepare the last rail core round," she ordered, voice steely. Jin hesitated. "Commander, at this range, if we fire, the recoil will tear us apart." Vale's eyes never left the beast. "If we don't fire, there won't be anything left to tear apart." The battered Vengeance pushed forward, a wounded wolf lunging at the jugular of a Titan. The Warcast seemed to sense the threat. Its central eye, a monstrous, swirling void, opened wide, locking onto the Vengeance. Plasma cannons and organic spines ready to fire. Vale stood up, blood leaking from a gash above her brow, and issued her final command. "Fire!" The railcore screamed one last time. The shot was perfect. The magnetoplasma slug ripped through space, pierced the Warcast's central eye, and detonated inside its brain core. There was a moment of perfect, horrifying silence, the kind that feels like the universe itself holding its breath. Then the Warcast convulsed violently. Energy erupted from its shattered heart, arcs of lightning and gravitational distortions ripping nearby ships into wreckage. Its colossal body folded inward, imploding like a dying star, dragging burning fragments of itself into a collapsing singularity. The shockwave struck the Vengeance like a hammer. The ship spun wildly, alarms blaring hull plates, shearing away fire engulfing half the decks. Vale felt herself thrown against the command chair, darkness closing around her. "Get us out!" she tried to shout, but the Vengeance didn't escape. It absorbed the full brunt of the collapse. The bridge exploded in fire and sound, and then silence. In orbit aboard the Retribution, they watched the aftermath. No more Warcast. No more monstrous signals, just debris ash echoes, and one blinking distress signal floating among the wreckage. General Reeves leaned forward, heart hammering against his ribs. "Confirm it," he barked. A comms officer turned, eyes wide with disbelief. "Sir, it's Commander Vale. She's alive." The Hollow Star, humanity's final test. The Drexer overmind reeled. The loss of the Warcast was unthinkable. A failure so catastrophic it rippled through every node, every synapse of the hive. Humanity had done the impossible. They hadn't just resisted, they hadn't just survived. They had killed a god. For the first time in its ancient existence, the Overmind acted not out of calculated expansion, but out of raw, desperate fear. It activated its final contingency, the Hollow Star, far beyond the reach of charted space where suns died unnamed and galaxies drifted forgotten. A colossal entity stirred. It was not a ship, it was not a fleet, it was a living planet, a grotesque amalgamation of consumed civilizations and stolen technologies, fused together into a weapon of unimaginable scale. The Hollow Star awoke with a tremor that distorted space itself. Billions of Drexer bioforms pulsed beneath its crust, sleeping soldiers waiting for a single command. At its core, a hive mind forged from the shattered fragments of 100 conquered overminds burned with one singular directive: erase Earth. Erase humanity, erase the memory of them. And it moved not through warp or hyperspace, but by devouring gravitational currents, pulling itself across the stars like a cancerous sun. On Earth, alarms rang out across every continent. The Retribution's command deck buzzed with frantic activity as deep space sensors registered the Hollow Star's approach. The simulations projected only one possible outcome if it reached orbit extinction. Commander Vale, still recovering from her near-fatal run aboard the Vengeance, stood at the center of the tactical hologram table, her face pale, but her eyes burning with new fury. General Reeves briefed the gathered officers in a voice stripped of anything but cold fact. "It's coming straight for us. Estimated time to Earth's orbit, 6 days." He tapped a command and the Hollow Star's trajectory blazed red across the map, a scar of inevitable doom. "We got half a fleet left after the Warcast engagement," Reeves continued. "Minimal planetary defenses, no reinforcements from the Council, no cavalry." Silence fell across the room, until Vale broke it. "We don't need a cavalry," she said. "We are the cavalry." Around her heads lifted battered, bloodied, but unbroken humanity's warriors. "Listen, Council fleets might still be out there," Jin offered, limping into the room with a fresh line of stitches across his forehead. "They've been sending messages, offers to negotiate, offers to assist." Vale laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. They had their chance. "No treaties," Reeves agreed. "No speeches." He locked eyes with Vale. "We hit it with everything we have. And if we fall, we make damn sure the galaxy never forgets why." Across Earth orbit, preparations began. The remaining human fleet rallied. The Retribution, still wounded but functional, took point. The Warlord and Final Dawn formed up as heavy assault support. The Ember Claw of the Ward, dozens of surviving frigates and destroyers, every ship that could still fly was armed to the teeth. But humanity wasn't alone anymore. From the depths of Council space, from old enemies and forgotten allies, a trickle of reinforcements began to arrive. Alien vessels, battered, desperate, but willing, dropped out of hyperspace around Earth. Taedi, fighters fast and nimble, Oron heavy cruisers retrofitted with human-designed weapons. Even defectors from the Council itself bringing intelligence and strength, they didn't fly under the Council's banners. They flew under a new flag, one stitched together from hope and defiance, a white star split by a crimson line, the symbol of the unified resistance. Commander Vale was back aboard a rebuilt vessel, the Vengeance 2, her old ship honored in steel, and Story, her new ship armed with humanity's last and deadliest weapons. As Earth's hybrid fleet assembled, the hollow star eclipsed the outer planets. Even from millions of kilometers away, its presence was overwhelming, tendrils of bioflesh and molten metal spiraling outward, dragging the light from nearby stars into itself. Lightning crawled along its crust like veins of fire. Psychic echoes leaked from it, whispering madness into any mind it brushed. Submit, surrender, die. Vale stared at it through her viewport, feeling the weight of that terrible mind pressing against her. And she smiled. She opened comms to the entire fleet. "This is Commander Lynn Vale aboard the Vengeance 2, she said, her voice steady, cutting through the static. "You've seen what they've done. Planets burned, species erased, but not us." She paused, letting the silence carry her words. "This isn't just about Earth. It's about every world that was told to run, every people who were told they were too weak to fight back." Her voice sharpened into steel. "We draw the line here. Today, together, we hold." Across the fleet, acknowledgement signals flashed green. No one was running, not this time. The first wave hit like the fist of an angry god. Human ships surged forward in coordinated strike groups, railguns and plasma lances. Blazing alien support wings weaved between them, adding their firepower, their rage, their desperate hope. The hollow star responded not with lasers or missiles, but with gravity. It tore apart space itself, creating miniature singularities that swallowed entire squadrons. It vomited forth swarms of bioforms, nightmarish constructs that latched onto ships, chewing through armor, infecting systems. The Retribution's main cannon fired again and again, blasting chunks of corrupted flesh off the hollow star's surface. The Warlord led strafing runs, carving burning scars across his tendrils. The Vengeance 2 dodged through the chaos, leading spearhead assaults straight toward the hollow star's core. But the enemy was vast beyond imagining. For every wound inflicted, the hollow star regenerated twofold. For every ship destroyed, it absorbed mass and grew stronger. Still, humanity and their newfound allies fought on, battered, bloodied, but unyielding. On the Vengeance 2's bridge, Jin reported grimly, "We're losing ships fast." Vale gritted her teeth. "We didn't come here to survive. We came here to win." A new plan formed in her mind, reckless, desperate, and purely human. They had one weapon left, the Soul Lance, a prototype beam weapon powered directly by the sun's corona, stored deep within Luna Base 1, never before fired in battle. A weapon of last resort. Vale opened a tight beam channel to General Reeves. "Prepare the Soul Lance," she said. "We'll punch a hole, you fire the shot." Reeves hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "Understood." Vale turned back to her crew. "One shot," she said, "one chance." And then she smiled, a bloody, reckless, furious smile. "Let's give them hell." The Vengeance 2 surged forward, leading a final suicidal charge straight into the hollow star's exposed core, carving the path for humanity's last hope. And behind them, gathering the fury of an entire species wronged, the Soul Lance began to charge. The last stand and a new dawn. The hollow star loomed above Earth's last defenders like an abyss, given form a living mass of death and decay radiating madness across the battlefield. Commander Lynn Vale gritted her teeth as the Vengeance 2 plunged into the chaos shields, buckling under relentless fire armor, plating peeling away under the assault of gravity spikes and bioorganic weapons. Every sensor screamed warnings, every system flickered on the edge of failure. But they pushed forward anyway, because that's what humanity did. Behind them, the Soul Lance began its final charge, drinking deep from the sun's burning heart, gathering energy at a rate that cracked the magnetic fields containing it. Time was running out. "Status on the core breach," Vale shouted over the din of alarms. Jin, blood streaming from a fresh gash across his temple, checked the tactical readout. "Almost there, another 30 seconds of sustained fire." Vale grimaced. 30 seconds was an eternity out here. The Hollow Star retaliated, spewing a tidal wave of biomechanical horrors toward the Vengeance 2. They latched onto the hull drilling, trying to breach into the ship's heart. "Point defenses," she roared. Automated cannons spun up, shredding the creatures, but more came. They were drowning in monsters, and still the Hollow Star grew closer, its central mass pulsing like a sick heart, ready to devour them all. Then a breakthrough. The Vengeance 2's main cannon punched through a membrane of the Hollow Star's outer shell, exposing a molten, writhing nexus of nerves and twisted alloy beneath. Now, Vale barked, "Signal the retribution." Across space, the signal was received. General Reeves, standing tall on the bridge of Earth's greatest warship, gave the final command: "Fire the Soul Lance." From Luna Base 1, the sky tore open. A spear of pure solar fury lanced through the black, a beam brighter than anything humanity had ever unleashed. It pierced the Hollow Star's exposed core, punching through layer after layer of corrupted matter, seeking the buried heart where the Overmind had stitched together its monstrous will. The Hollow Star screamed, not in sound but in gravitational distortion, in psychic wails that shattered lesser minds and bent space itself. Ships exploded. Some alien vessels vaporized instantly. Even human ships built to endure hell cracked under the force of the Hollow Star's death throes. The Vengeance 2 was caught in the shockwave. "Brace!" Vale shouted, grabbing the arms of her chair as the ship was flung through space like a leaf in a hurricane. Consoles exploded, bulkheads ruptured, fire consumed sections of the ship in seconds. The last thing Vale saw before the bridge went dark was the Hollow Star, collapsing inward, folding into itself like a dying sun, vanishing into a singularity of its own making. And then silence. When Vale woke, everything hurt. She was floating in a medbay, tubes in her arms, monitors softly beeping around her. The ceiling above her was cracked, patched hastily, but she was alive. General Reeves stood nearby, arms folded, a rare softness in his usually iron gaze. "You did it," he said quietly. Vale coughed, pain flaring in her ribs. "We did it," she rasped. Reeves cracked a grim smile. "The Hollow Star is gone, no more Overmind, no more Swarm." Vale closed her eyes for a moment, letting the reality sink in. They had survived. Against all odds, against every logical prediction, humanity and the galaxy still breathed. But she knew better than to believe in happy endings. "What's left?" she asked hoarsely. Reeves hesitated. "Half the fleet, maybe less. Earth's defenses are holding, but it'll take years to rebuild." "And the Council?" He laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "They're scrambling, begging for negotiations, offering honors treaties, seats at their tables." Vale opened her eyes, fixing him with a tired but sharp stare. "And hell?" Reeves shook his head. "No interest, Tersavan." Outside, beyond the reinforced windows, Earth's new fleet floated, battered, scorched but free. No longer just humanity's fleet. Ships of the Tiety, the Oran, the Brachi warriors, and dozens more flew beside human vessels, their banners stitched together into one, a unified resistance forged in blood and fire. The galaxy had changed. Forever. In the following days, messages flooded Earth's comms networks. Offers of alliance, pleas for protection, requests to join the resistance. Vale, still healing, was summoned to Earth's new war council. The chamber was hastily built, rough and functional, a place for soldiers, not politicians. She stood before leaders, old and new, her body battered but her spirit burning brighter than ever. "We're not here to rebuild the council," she said, voice carrying the weight of 1,000 battles. "We're not here to rule." She pointed to the map hovering above them, a fractured galaxy, red scars where Drexer territories still festered. "We're here to finish what we started, to make sure this never happens again, to fight not because we want to conquer, but because someone has to." Silence followed. Then one by one voices rose in agreement. Earth would not become an empire. They would become the shield the galaxy had lacked for too long. A shield made of steel and sacrifice. A shield built by those who refused to forget what it meant to fight. Far beyond the newly forming alliances in the ruined depths of forgotten Drexer worlds, something stirred. Remnants, echoes. The Overmind might be dead, but not every Drexer had fallen. And in the cold places between galaxies, new threats whispered. But now the galaxy had an answer. Now there was a force that would not run, would not bow, would not break. Back aboard the Vengeance 2, newly refitted and stronger than before, Commander Vale stood once more at the command deck. Jun, walking with a limp but alive, slid into his station with a grin. "Orders, Commander." Vale stared out at the stars, the same stars that had once turned their backs on humanity, and smiled. "Set a course," she said. "We've got a galaxy to finish saving." Engines roared to life. The Vengeance turned toward the unknown, and humanity, stubborn, scarred, defiant. Humanity surged forward into the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians, as legends reborn.